everyone, and thank you for joining and taking your time from your busy schedule. Welcome to Tiger Analytics webinar, Connected Insights in CPG. Today, we will have a conversation with industry stalwarts about empowering the CPG industry with data and insights that cover factors to drive better business outcomes and best practices to tackle challenges of today and tomorrow. With this, I would like to take an opportunity to welcome our esteemed speakers, Deepak Jose. Welcome, Deepak. So Deepak is a guest speaker and is a global head ODDS solutions from Mars Wrigley. I also have with us Michelle Goes, who is a vice president, principal analyst for Forrester Research. Welcome, Michelle. And nice to see you. I also have Kishore Gumaraju, who is a chief customer officer with Tiger Analytics. Welcome, Kishore.
Thank you.
Nice to see you all. And with this, I would like to hand over to Michelle. Over to you, Michelle.
Hi, everyone. Sounds like a really big area, and it is, but it's really exciting, and hopefully we can talk about some of the things that are happening within the space and where we're taking our modern approaches. I love this if you think that your microwave is collecting data and the TV is spying on you is bad enough, the vacuum's been gathering dirt on you for years. And this is like a really good way of thinking about how we've transitioned into more of an information age where, we're able to utilize our internet experiences. We're able to understand and interpret what's going, the types of things that we're doing with our on our computers, but at the same time, we have different ways to interact with our TVs and our home with smart homes and so on, and our smart devices on us. And what that's really doing is helping us create new value propositions and personalize what our experiences are going to be, what matters to us, what do we care about as customers, as employees, and as leaders of industry. But when we talk about gathering dirt on you for years, there's obviously things to consider from a privacy and a security standpoint that we're starting to really understand further. And certainly as we introduce more artificial intelligence capabilities, we want to be able to address those as well. So, overlaying AI, it's really taking us into that connected world. Many companies that are, consumer packaged goods companies like Mars in particular, is thinking about how do we not just sell our products through a retail or a wholesale space, but how do we get directly connected to our customers? So we think about this as business to business to consumer. And why is that important? Because the more you can understand and collect about your customer, the more that customers are willing to provide information, the better you are at ensuring that your products that they love are where they're ready and they can acquire them. And so you're designing a supply chain and a logistics and fulfillment mechanism that is directly connected and adapted to where your customers are in the moment and where where your business should be. So AI is really helping us adjust and be adaptive and to be resilient and also to be very creative in the way that we're going to move forward. If we look at AI from a consumer packaged goods perspective, there really are 5 key benefits that are coming out from this. One is obviously improving operational efficiency and effectiveness. What technology isn't focused on making us be able to do more with less? So that's pretty typical. In CPG, it's also about not just how you're creating strong connections and operations with your customers, but it's also thinking what is happening behind the scenes and where can you apply automation into those processes and fulfill more succinctly virtual and direct engagement with your customers. So really implementing AI at those opportune points in what that customer journey actually looks like. But certainly increases in automation isn't only about what's going on with the customer, it's thinking about how are you manufacturing the products that you're selling? What are, how are you designing new recipes? How are you, instructing those recipes onto your manufacturing lines? How are you also ensuring that you're producing and filling those form factors, those boxes, those packages, so that they're going to meet the expectation of what your customers need, but also manage some of the costs behind that. Certainly improving customer experience. I think what's been really interesting is that it's not only the experience within the purchase, but we see examples of, say, McCormick and spice companies where they're looking at, like, how do we help you build your recipes? What types of spices do you want to use in those? Can we introduce you to new spices so that, you can have new and emerging types of recipes and foods on your dinner table, for example? So getting, using AI in ways to create different ways of engaging with your customers and demonstrating stronger interest in what your customers care about, which ultimately is going to improve the brand equity and create alignment between who you think you are as a brand and what your customers think of as a brand. And then lastly, how do you anticipate and respond to competitive and market changes? Obviously, AI isn't only for the basics of a forecasting tool, but it's helping you you're not just collecting information about your customers, you're able to collect information about the market and see that market dynamic through a digital lens, as well as inputs of what you're collecting overall and just doing business. AI is helping to look at that information, understand it, and interpret it to start recognizing, is the competition moving in a direction that's going to affect you? How are you going to respond? And also dealing with a lot of the economic conditions that we're going in place right now. But we really also have to recognize that it's not easy. We know it's not easy, and we still have a lot of challenges around it. The cost within the consumer packaged goods sector is, cost is everything. You're working on very tight margins. You want, you want to right size the investment of AI. It's not just deploying something and playing around and seeing it if it works. It's being very focused and identifying those areas that are going to have the biggest bang for the buck. So there's this constant balance, and how do you right size that? Lack of skills to develop AI solutions. There's a very tight market on, not just in CPG, but across the board. And many of those higher end data science skills and even engineering and developer skills for these new capabilities, applications, experiences are constantly evolving and developing. And oftentimes it's hard to bring them into your own organization. So you'll have to outsource and get partnerships from that. But the other side of lack of skills to develop AI solutions is also, what are the business skills and talent, and how are they open, understanding, and prepared to participate in these new types of technologies, to manage and take advantage of these new types of technologies? Governance is going to be critical. It's not only in the existing areas of things like, preparing around like security, but you've got privacy considerations and those regulations. Within Europe, if you're there, the AI Act is about ready to roll out, and there's definitely risk models that you have to start understanding your own classifications to make sure that you're not stepping on the toes of those regulations. But even within North America, while we may not have national types of regulations guiding AI, within states and municipalities, those are starting to come up. How do you keep up on all of those when there's so many and it's so distributed? Poor quality of data is an interesting one. We used to think of data quality as like, how do you clean it up? and process it that way. But really what we're talking about is the integrity of that data. Is it relevant to the AI capability that we're trying to create? Are we addressing any biases that are coming in? If you don't have enough cases or you're missing cases, or missing information, how do you deal with that when you want to train your model appropriately? What labeling and classification mechanisms are you going to do? How do you use different types of even machine learning techniques to address that? So, doing that not only for one AI capability that you're doing, but how do you do that at scale is also a challenge. And then there's still some lack of executive support to drive the use of AI. If we know that 48% of CEOs think of AI as just another technology to drive efficiency. But AI also has the potential for upside, revenue, investor reputations, things of that nature. So how do you help to identify areas and communicate value upstream to the executives that shows you're working on both sides of the financial equation? You're saving money, but also that AI is making money. And ultimately, what it comes down to is the data. We have to ensure that data is being used to inform opportunity cost and investment. The data can help us even identify where lack of skills are. Data literacy is going to be a foundational element, and the governance of data is a foundational element to the foundation of AI. The quality of the data is going to help you, address where your data, where the quality of the data is supporting, being able to meet these regulations. And obviously information or data and the quality of that information is how do you tell the stories to your executives to make that possible. Ultimately, you need to think about AI not just as data science or machine learning capabilities or just some broader technology. You're building experiences, you're building value. And ultimately what you want to do is create a cycle that looks at this through a connected lens. At Forrester, we call this connected intelligence. And what's important here is that this isn't just a developer perspective. You need to understand who your partners are. Your data professionals, your other technology professionals, your data scientists are certainly important, but who are your business partners? Who are your external partners? How do you bring all the right talent to the table in the full cycle of ideation for how you want to use AI to running and helping you? And certainly, how do you work together? How do you communicate? How do you collaborate? How do you coordinate across that matrix of talent? And then lastly, that platform isn't just there to run to build your models and do the data science activities. It's not just there to deploy and execute on those AI capabilities. It is also there to facilitate and reinforce and infuse those best practices and approaches so that working with an extensive matrix of partners and coordinating those practices are happening together. And ultimately, the way that you look at it is 8 competencies, really thinking about the process of going from an idea and sourcing information all the way through to, is AI performing the way that you want and getting the business outcomes that you need, or how is it potentially detracting or creating risk within there? So the first 3 in black to gray are really concentrating on what are those core competencies you need to address the data integrity challenge that we talked about on the previous page. You have to be strategically focused on how to source data, Where do you go to find it? What types of information? How do you trust that information? What types of terms and conditions and entitlements maybe come along with external sources of data? What is the cost of that? What are you allowed to use? What can't you use? Then you have to think about, well, once you understand that and you've identified you want to bring that in, how do you capture and ingest that and make it readily available? And certainly curation and modeling is dealing with making sense of this information so that consumption can be done. When you move into transform and prepare, to test and train, and deliver and deploy, that's really your development aspects. This is where data scientists, machine learning engineers, data engineers, developers, and your DevOps teams are really working together to connect the components between what goes on with the model and the data upstream into that solution that creates that connected intelligence. So you transition, and we're seeing more and more of a developer agile CI/CD approach, so that everybody is working in tune with each other to be able to deploy, not just have nice insights on a page or within a chart. And then lastly, how do you manage these in your environment? There's a aspect of execute and act where you're really thinking succinctly about how these environments are running, this is where your ML ops and your data ops practices are coming in, where you're managing that system. And then lastly, you want to continuously optimize. So what is that business observation? How do you evaluate the performance in context of your business? And ultimately that takes you to a performant connected intelligence experience with your AI competency. It takes a village, like I said. This is really a landscape of the types of talent that we're talking about here. So it's not just how do you build the data science talent, it's also everybody is involved. And this kind of gives you a perspective of how your leadership teams come together with those who are designing the experiences and capabilities and redesigning processes within the organization. That subject matter expertise really has to come together, and have strong facilitators to help those conversations and different languages merge, so that you can actually envision what your solution is. And then you can get down to the business of actually creating, deploying those capabilities and seeing that value. So hopefully I've given you a good understanding of, what it means to have connected intelligence, ways that you can address some of the friction that might be occurring, and giving you some pointers on some areas where you can focus on to move forward. But what I'd like to do now is kind of move over into the Q&A portion of this webinar. Oops. Okay. Pulling these up.
Maybe in the meanwhile, we can have
Strictly. Now, if we were having this conversation in person, I would have started by giving all of you some M&Ms or Snickers to make your day much even better by attending this. But unfortunately, I cannot. But I hope some version of this session in the future, we'll plan to have it in person. As part of my remit, I work on several demand analytics related areas. And one of the key themes that we focus on is on connected decision making, on how to break the organizational silos. And I'm really excited to be here with one of our strategic partners, the Tiger team, who is helping us deliver some of the key capabilities as well. Over to you, Kishore.
Awesome, Deepak. So Deepak, maybe Michelle, would you be asking the questions, or you want me to go ahead and start?
No, I will go right ahead right now. So thank you so much. This is great. It's always good to get the expert perspective and the practitioner perspective on what's going on. So I think this is going to be really valuable. Maybe let's start with, what do you think are really sort of the bigger opportunities within CPG organizations looking to transform themselves with data and intelligence? So Deepak, do you want to start with that?
Absolutely. Hey, Michelle, I think if you want to stop sharing the screen, I think the team would be able to see all of our faces. I think so. Quick suggestion there. But so, okay, no problem. So a great question about the opportunities, right? Like, and I'll start with as Mars, we have been going through a version of our digital transformation journey, and we have a lot of learnings. So I think I'm going to highlight three aspects in this discussion. So have experience in the data and analytics space. In the past, probably 15-20 years back, we used to have the data warehouse. Probably 5 to 10 years back, we started creating data lakes. Now we have lake houses. In the future, we might be creating data meshes, etc. Right? Like, we always started by talking about building a huge data foundation, which will generate some knowledge and insights, which will generate some actions, which will create some value. And always, when it came to a data analytics practice, we started with the data first approach. Now, one thing that at Mars that we are going to do is we want to change that. We want to invert the pyramid, and we want to start with a value first approach. See, what are the decisions the data analytics team can help activate? For generating those decisions, what are the actions we need to have? For that, what is the knowledge and insights that is needed? And for that, what is the data need to have? So instead of going with the data first, value second approach, we went with the business problem value first approach to a data second approach, so that we can focus on the biggest strategic priorities. How did it help Mars? We were able to move from a mindset that we had, which was very, hey, data analytics is a cost center mindset, to more of a data analytics is a profit center mindset. That mindset shift itself was very important within the team to go for the biggest value creation. The second aspect that we learned over the last 4 years of journey, in the beginning, Mars being a 100-plus-year-old organization, what we have seen is that there is a significant opportunity leveraging AI and advanced analytics practice to help the organization move with speed. So our digital organization had a motto of 100x speed, like to drive innovation, drive new experimentation. So that was one of the big aspects. And as we are going through the maturity of these capabilities, which we develop with a lot of speed, we are starting to focus on scaling these capabilities. Scale, it has multiple aspects. It's a geographical scale is one. Improving the capabilities of one specific capability that we have met, that is another aspect of scale. And the last aspect is on sustainability. How can we build this in a reusable way, which is not a one-time activity? So how can we do this? And the last one, value. The second one is on speed, scale, and sustainability. And the last one is on the organizational culture. Now, the culture, as you mentioned in the slide, it's very important. I think all of us have heard the term, culture can eat strategy for breakfast. I think they can eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? So culture is very important and always starts from the top. Now, to drive the culture, it is also important to build an ecosystem of digital specialists, not only within the organization, within our ecosystem as well. So that's where we leverage a lot of partners like Tiger with their expertise. Having that perspective from multiple industries also help us influence our organizations to drive the right digital mindset within the organization. I hope this gives you a bit of a flavor to what we are trying to accomplish at Mars.
Yeah, I love that. And the point on culture is so spot on. I think, a lot of those challenges actually could be alleviated by building the right culture. So thanks for sharing that. Kishore, do you want to give us some input on what you think the biggest opportunities are?
Absolutely. So I think all the things that Deepak mentioned absolutely are spot on. It's value, scale, culture, right? I'll maybe take it down to the next level of, in terms of the, with all of these ingredients in place, what are the areas of opportunity we see, right? So I see broadly three areas, which I think, Michelle, you also touched upon, like automation, enhancing customer experience, and execution effectiveness, right? Now, there are huge areas of opportunity across business functions and then cross-functional use cases. So if I look at business functions, like R&D, right, product innovation. So we are helping a large cosmetics player develop product safety reports, right? Product safety reports using all the online data that's available on regulations across countries and different languages, and automating that. Now that reduces the amount of time it takes to introduce a new product, right, by months, which is a huge revenue driver. The other thing is, we are on sustainability. We're helping the organization develop a green score, right, to be able to know exactly how their brands are performing with respect to various environmental factors, whether it is health environment or human sustainability, multiple dimensions of sustainability. Customer experience, we're working now with Deepak. We're trying to innovate on first-party data assets to help precision targeting of shoppers and consumers. Supply chain and building sense and response capabilities is a huge aspect of things. While there is optimization opportunity in business functions, I think the bigger opportunity, the huge opportunity and unlock today is really across cross-functional use cases, right? Like for example, you take in supply chain, you take inventory optimization. Is it a demand problem? Not really. You need to look at the entire flow. You need to look at the bi-directional aspects of the supply chain on the supply side as well as the demand side. So while we put in place the foundational building blocks of value-driven mindset, an ability to think and architect your solutions to deliver on scale, and the other aspect of ensuring culture and talent is in place, there are opportunities, a plethora of opportunities that are available using these lenses to be able to deploy use cases across supply chain, across R&D, sustainability, customer experience, basically across the entire set of business functions. And that's how we view it.
Yeah, that's such an important point. Like we think about applying AI or machine learning in very pointed areas within a process and automation, and yeah, that has benefit. But you really stress the fact that how AI draws together those processes or those silos is really where you're going to get the flywheel in. When it comes to maximizing the value of the data, but also having these AI opportunities actually show up as tangible results for your business. Maybe we'll transition here. Just like we talked about the benefits and the opportunities up front when we were kicking things off, it's not always easy. So what do you think prevents you from getting there? Or what have your experiences been and that friction that sometimes occurs? Deepak, do you want to give some examples from your perspective?
Absolutely. I think again, I'll go with the format of the top three things that I've said. The first one that I want to highlight is on organizational silos. So what does that mean? So I'm sure that all of us have heard the story of four blind people explaining an elephant. Somebody touching the trunk of an elephant, explaining it's something, somebody touching the leg, somebody touching the tail. So that is happening in our large organizations. Now, the supply chain team explains the consumer a certain way. The sales team explains the consumer a certain way. The marketing team explains the consumer a certain way. And for us to give an integrated brand experience or integrated consumer experience, we need to have a holistic picture of the connected decision making, and that's why the idea of connected decision making is very important. We need to break the organizational silos. So if you think about our retailers also, traditionally an organization like Mars would work with any brick and click retailers. Some of our largest customers, they used to have a brick and mortar buyer, and they had a decom buyer, e-commerce buyer. Now there is an omni-channel buyer, and as an organization, we need to move really fast to make sure that we map out the connected decision making. So that's the first thing. The second biggest challenge to unlock the maximum value is connected data ecosystem. Now, it always started with the connected decisions. To enable that, we need to have connected data, and data is the biggest unlock for this. Now, the data also sometimes situate in a lot of silos. Now, all of us CPG practitioners, we have very robust third-party data which is available. Now, that used to be the past. It was always third-party data and the internal data for probably a decade back. Now you have the second-party data which is available through our retail media network partners. You would have heard about Walmart giving Luminate as a data source. Fetch Rewards is a second-party data. Amazon Ads data. The second-party data sources growing up. Similarly, there is first-party data that we are collecting on an ongoing basis with the consumer data platforms. Now, we also have zero-party data. Depending on consumers' willingness to consent, they are willing to give us some data. And none of these data should sit in silos. We need to build a connected stitch data ecosystem. The connected data, building that ecosystem is going to be the second biggest challenge. And the third thing, we can have the best decision tools, the analytical tools, but if our business associates are not trained and upskilled to use these toolkits so that they can take day-to-day decisions, I think that is another biggest challenge. And in our experience, for every $1 we are investing in a tool building, if we can spend that one additional dollar in organizational cultural change, organizational change management, we get maximum outcome out of those kinds of engagement. So how can we spend dollars on training and upskilling the team? That's another aspect that we have seen. Wherever we have done this really well, we were able to overcome those challenges.
Great, thank you. And Kishore, what do you see overall from your perspective? You've got this wide lens across a variety of different CPG organizations.
Actually, Deepak has already stolen my thunder and answered everything there. So, and I really think on a serious note, Mars is one of the organizations that's gotten this right and is on the in terms of being mature about how you deal with culture, because that's really critical to activation of any of these use cases, right? Activation and value only happens if there is adoption at the last mile, and adoption at the last mile is something that's extremely critical, and that needs a lot of focus on, and that's a part of culture, that's a part of involving all the stakeholders in the right way and engaging with them and all of that. The other thing that Deepak mentioned, which is really about connecting the dots, right? Connecting the dots, and that's a critical aspect. He referred to two things. One is connecting the dots across the organization and across silos, and second is the data, right? And I think these two are very, very related. The organization silos are a matter of structure. When there is a structure, there is always going to be some priorities, there are incentives, there are motivations and all of that. And that won't necessarily change overnight. Because of the way organizations are structured, the metrics, decision-making, initiatives, everything tends to become siloed, right? So while there is an aspect of bringing things together, which requires a lot of leadership commitment, there's also some amount of time that it takes. The challenge that I see is also that in this context, how do you allow your analytical decision-making data ecosystem to evolve such that it keeps up with the needs of the future, right? So I think that there's an art in that, and that's something that we are also investing in and saying, how do we establish an underlying data foundation that is able to connect the dots so that while the cultural and structural aspects are solved, which takes some amount of time, you still have the underlying capability to connect the dots, right? Now that comes to the part of data. The data itself, if you take it to the next level, comes in different forms, granularity, quality. It makes it hard, especially as Deepak mentioned, right? As you go across markets, across categories, right? Now, for example, you take developing a global forecasting solution, or a global RGM solution, or a global pricing solution. There are multiple parts you need to design for, right? The quality of the data, the harmonization that's required, democratizing access through discoverability so that you can discover this data across the silos, and then ongoing management of the data, right? So there are those challenges that need to be dealt with, which is really breaking silos, which is related to data, activation. And one other thing that I see CPG companies particularly faced with is the technology evolution. So there are technology and process transformation initiatives on. There's an SAP HANA initiative, There may be a supply chain initiative. You may be implementing an O9 or a Kinaxis or a SAP IBP or something, and then this tendency of saying, "Oh, let me wait for those 2 years for all that transformation to be over." But you don't have that time. So how is it that you keep up with an evolving landscape, an evolving technology landscape, and an evolving landscape in terms of your own underlying processes without having to wait for them, and at the same time architecting something that is future ready? Is also a challenge I see that CPG companies face.
Absolutely. So from what you say, there's a lot of discussion about how do you connect the dots? How do you do that across different silos? Some specific examples. Help us bring that to life a little bit. Deepak, can you start there?
Absolutely. So let me highlight one or two examples when it comes to connecting the dots. So if you think about, you are a Mars consumer, there are multiple touch points in which you will learn about Mars, right? And internally we call it our consumer journey hexagon. So you can get inspired about our brands. Maybe through our off platform, you go to a Google search. That is one way. You go to the contents and reviews about our products. That is another way. So different off platforms. The global search engines, etc. You will have a good understanding about our products. Another way you will learn a lot about our products is when you touch with our product is, let's say, if you go to you go to a pure play e-commerce customer of ours, like Amazon.com. You search for, say, Easter chocolates, right? So you will definitely see our products there. Alibaba. So think about the large first-party customers. Another way is the brick and clicks. Walmart, Tesco, Kroger, Carrefour, the large brick and mortars who are in the omni-channel space. We are also seeing customers evolving in the on-demand delivery aggregators, right? Instacart, Deliveroo, Delivery Hero. So that is another touch point. And another important touch point for us is, as a consumer, you might be going to M&M stores, and there are some selected stores. You might go to mnms.com. So this is a complex ecosystem, right, where there are multiple touch points. And especially since the pandemic, some of the questions our general managers started asking was, hey, if I have $1 additional to invest, where would I put it? And we, to answer this question, we built a capability called Integrated 360. So if I have $1 additional to invest, would I put it in trade? Would I put it in media? Would I put it in shopper marketing or a consumer promotion? Would I put it in our e-commerce channel, etc.? So this is a use case, and which is helping the GM of the organization, the regional presidents, the CFOs to take strategic investment decisions. So that's where it starts, right? It's a real use case to connect the dots and where to make the investments. And one of the really successful use cases that we activated with the Tiger team is on strategic revenue management. So even probably 10 years back, I used to work for Coca-Cola company, and we used to tell this, when it comes to revenue growth management, we had this generally the CFOs of the organization, large CPG companies, will have a big role in taking a pricing action, how to increase the price. Now the promotion discounts were generally managed by the chief sales officer of the company. Now in general, how it happens is that the CFO would take the pricing action. The sales team, in many cases, would sell in the price increases. In some cases, they would count it with a huge promotion. So there is a lot of, so in one part of the organization would be celebrating a price increase. Other aspect of the organization would be giving a lot of discount. We had a running joke at Coke that this is like, if a doctor coming out of surgery talking about the patient that the surgery was successful, but the patient is dead. So end of the day, organization is not making profits. So I think when it came to some of our Mars capabilities, and I think this is where the Tiger team has helped us, we build out a connected pricing, promotion, and trade architecture toolkit. So what does that mean? we have a single source of truth when it comes to how do we take pricing action, the promo action, and the trade architecture. So anytime, let's say we are thinking about giving the right kind of pricing and promo, then right kind of pricing, then the sales team will be able to see what is the impact on the promotion. They will also have a point of view from a tool called Profit Pool. They will also have a point of view. What is the profitability which Mars can have, and what is the profitability which will go to our customers, etc. So some really successful use cases that we've implemented at Mars. And Kishore, you might have more things to add as well.
Yeah.
No,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Michelle.
No, I was just going to say that's really interesting. It's like, what's the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. And I've seen that a lot, even in marketing promotions where you put discounts in and you're driving different types of products and there's no inventory. So you have these backlogs. It's just these disconnects, the ability to get on the same page. When you talk about silos, that's really what we're addressing here. But Kishore, I know that you've got some take and examples from supply chain and sustainability. Do you want to tell us about those?
Yeah, absolutely with that. And I just also wanted to connect to what Deepak mentioned in terms of the examples that he gave, as well as the strategic revenue management initiatives, right? There's also a question there on pricing, so I want to connect the two there. So one of the things that we've done very well at Mars, and really hats off to the team there, is defining the problem right? So engaging with the business stakeholders across what Deepak's group, which is the One Demand group, and the business teams, to help define the context of the business problem. And usually when you do that, your problem does not just become unidimensional, right? Of saying pricing, for example, right? Because the problem in the market, when you are looking at winning the consumer, right, the problem becomes multidimensional, and therefore it becomes cross-functional, and therefore it cuts across silos. So I think one key thing of connecting the dots is defining the problem right. Because when you get to the problem tends to be cross-functional, the problem tends to be multidimensional, right? The second thing, and it also helps with the activation and realization of value. Second thing is, I think we referred to it before, and I can't stress it no more, that it's architecting the data. So there's a large supply chain transformation that we're driving for a large CPG company, a global CPG company. It's a global transformation, and they have an SAP initiative also running in parallel, a supply chain transformation also. And what we've done is we used our Tiger Data Fabric solution to architect a data foundation. Now, the key elements of the data foundation is automates data quality, harmonization. Most importantly, provides data discovery, discoverability using looking at relationships with the data with dynamic graphs, right? Ability to virtualize the data. Now, why this virtualization becomes critical is that as the underlying data landscape shifts, that gives us the ability to manage to the evolution of the data as well, right? Now, this architecture of the data becomes very critical to establish that capability to connect the dots. Because tomorrow, as you are building the use cases to deliver on those, you need to be able to at least see the connections between data across the entire value chain. The third aspect is something that I alluded to earlier, which is really continuous innovation, and Deepak talked of it, right? So for example, on-demand delivery suddenly grew during the COVID times, which is when we started collaborating with Mars and saying, how can we tackle this channel, right? So you need to have capabilities that enable innovation, and that's where we've established innovation and design labs. We're working with a large CPG company to establish their simulation hub. Now, this is what is now famously called digital twins, but it has not been realized in most organizations. But what we've established is this simulation hub to be able to simulate all the supply chain activities, to be able to then take specific decisions, right? Generative AI, suddenly with ChatGPT, there's a huge buzz on saying, what can you do here? It's ultimately about large language models to develop insights. We're using this in the context of R&D and sustainability, as I mentioned earlier, right, in one of the organizations. And with Deepak, we are now looking at, as you mentioned, right, looking at first party, second party data sources to say, okay, how can we use this for precision targeting, precision strategic revenue, precision RGM or revenue growth management, or precision marketing initiatives. So there is this aspect of continuous innovation because underlying data keeps changing. There are new sources of data. It's about saying, how do you leverage this to be able to solve those problems that you defined in a cross-functional manner, working with the business stakeholders. So that, I think, are key tenets of connecting the dots, Michelle.
Great. So I know we've got just a few more minutes left of this portion of the Fireside chat before we open it up for presentation. So maybe one last question. Deepak, I'll start with you. What are you specifically doing to be able to make the most of this opportunity? Maybe give us some examples from an organization perspective.
Very good. So I think I want to start by talking about our responsible AI strategy, which is the most important thing that we believe that any organization should start focusing on as we accelerate the usage of AI. So essentially, what is responsible AI? How can we leverage AI for good? How can we do it ethically, which is going to be very important. So we have identified key 7 principles when it comes to responsible use of AI, with no specific order, to say the least. So it should always start with the code of conduct when it comes to AI. Now, you have heard about the Cambridge Analytica scandal, and many scandals like that. I am sure that the data engineers working for this organization never intended this to happen. This happened because of lack of a code of conduct, which moves to the second important aspect of putting a AI governance in place to make sure that we don't have inherent bias. As all of us know, AI algorithms look at the historical data on for a period of time to see how they can help us define the future. And you will see a lot of inherent bias. You would have heard of a large organization trying to leverage AI solutions to in their hiring practices for data people, and it had an inherent bias against women. And I think having a clear governance is going to be very important. Now, along with governance, the aspect of diversity and inclusion is very important. For example, you can't have only men as data scientists in an organization and expect that it will not have any explicit bias. It will have. So thinking about the diversity and inclusion is very important. While diversity is in numbers, inclusion is about the mindset and how can we get diverse perspective. One thing I'm personally really proud of, especially with my team at Mars, is we have put there are multiple aspects of diversity. Gender diversity is something that we have focused on. We have 50% women as part of my leadership team, and these fantastic leaders are bringing more diversity to the data analytics community. We are building partnership with women leaders in data and AI, Wilda, girls who code, etc., to bring that diversity. Now, I talked about the three important aspects. We talked about the first party and second party data. So collection of this data is going to be very important. Then the transparency and the explainability is another aspect that we are focusing quite a bit on. Another important aspect is sustainable use of these resources, because we will have an impact on the carbon footprint and whatnot. And finally, how can we build a test and learn mindset when it comes to AI? Now, Kishore earlier mentioned about generative AI and ChatGPT. Now, and the more and more new technologies come into space, how can we continue to innovate? So that is another important aspect. Now, Mars as an organization, we have a responsible marketing strategy. So we don't target children who are in the primary school, and we have a policy of collecting no data from children under 14. So having this responsible AI strategy, which is strongly connected to the responsible marketing strategy, is helping us quite a bit and make a huge difference and evangelize AI and data and analytics within the organization.
Great, thank you. Kishore, do you want to give us a little bit of Tiger perspective on solutions and approaches?
Yeah, absolutely, Michelle. And for us, it's really constantly keeping pace with the evolving change, right? So, and in this context, we believe that no client should really tie themselves down to any proprietary solutions, right? And at the same time, starting from scratch is not an option, right? So you need to have acceleration. So hence, we have invested and continue to invest in developing solutions which take you about 60 to 70% there. Anyways, no product in the data analytics space takes you to anything beyond 70%. And the other thing is they perpetuate data silos and make you get stuck in proprietary technologies and with no scope of innovation when there is something new that comes up. What we've done is we've developed a suite of solutions, right? So, for example, I'll take some instances like supply chain intelligence. We developed a suite called Tiger Sky. Now, this is a suite that comes with data fabric, code templates that help you deploy analytical use cases rapidly, and an orchestrator. Earlier, Michelle, you talked of it's not only about building a model and a PowerPoint presentation, but it's really about orchestrating quickly, configuring use cases, deploying the models, having the appropriate model monitoring, the single touch deployment. And we built this with a microservices kind of based architecture. And today we are solving several problems: customer service, sustainability, middle mile visibility, manufacturing intelligence using the same architecture, right? The other thing is customer execution excellence, right? So we've developed something called Tiger Omni Brain. These are solutions that help develop and help optimize omni-channel investment in the context of growing retail media, as you alluded to, right? Improving success of innovations. A solution on emerging trends there has basically the suite of solutions that helps improve the time to market on innovations, right? So that's what we've developed, and we'll be able to forecast the value of an emerging innovation and the flavor. And finally, of course, precision marketing that we talked about earlier, which is mixed. I think there's some background noise. Michelle, I think it's coming on your side probably. You can just yes.
It's not on my side. Strange.
Okay. And finally, sum it up with precision marketing, which is really market mix modeling, as well as developing new capabilities around precision marketing, leveraging new and emerging data sources. So that's what we are doing, building these accelerators, these solutions that help us reduce time to market on deployment, but also help keep ahead in terms of the innovation curve.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. So I just want to thank you for, taking the time so that we could have this fireside chat. I learn a lot every time we do these types of things. So I appreciate it. I hope those that have attended have appreciated. Maybe just to recap the things that kind of stood out in my mind was you can't underestimate culture as part of this process. Everybody has to be educated. Everybody has to be lots of communication, lots of coordination. It really is end to end. I think the other thing that really came out was start with how you want the experience or the process to work. You can't just look at these things in silos. I think Deepak, your description of really, don't look at a part of the elephant, look at the entire customer journey and getting everybody on the same page and certainly answering the question. I think, Kishore, you brought up a really good point that you need modern platforms, you need modern development practices, you need to break things down so that you have reusability, composability. You talked about microservices quite a bit there. And then, overall, it's really just about, making sure that you're contributing to the business, contributing to the things that they care about, and, bringing it together within a business context. So just really, really great input and guidance. But why don't I do this? I'm going to hand over to Yasmin. She's going to help facilitate some of the questions that you might have as part of, out in the audience.
All right. Thank you, Michelle, for being a lovely moderator. Thanks so much. And this was an insightful session. Got to hear and learn a lot. And I'm sure same is for the audience as well. We covered aspects like top 5 AI challenge in CPG, connected intelligence, innovations, capabilities, organization culture, sustainability, and yes, being future ready, and diversity, of course. With this, I would like to take a few questions. I believe our audience are waiting. Let me take the first one for you. There's a question asked for Deepak. I think this we have already answered. Maybe I'll move on with the other one. In the RGM capability that was mentioned, where we have pricing, promotion altogether at one place, which is more of a value addition for a CPG firm.
So I think from a value addition, say The easy answer for it is it depends, and it depends on which category you are talking about, and it depends on which geography you are talking about, and it depends on what kind of customer. Is it going to be a large key account kind of a customer? Is it going to be so? I think I don't have a standard answer for that. Now, I think when you think about the connected messaging is one. How can you leverage your trade promotion dollars in an effective way is another one, so that you can attract new consumers.
It was indeed an honor to be part of this event. And on behalf of Tiger Analytics, I would like to thank and extend my gratitude to all my esteemed guests, Deepak, Michelle, and of course, Kishore. And finally, thank you for being a lovely audience. Thanks once again, and have a great day ahead, everyone. See you soon.